Hello again, beautiful beings, and welcome to my family. I guess you can't really see Abby now, but there she is. She doesn't know what's going on. Today we are talking all about relationships, 5D relationships, our relationship. And yeah, we're just gonna kind of answer some questions from all of you. Thank you guys in advance for your super chats and your support and donations. Unnecessary, but really appreciated. And so today we're going to answer a bunch of your questions. They are really fun, so I'm excited to get into them. And you'll see me flip between my more human side, because obviously this is a human relationship, and then also my teacher side. So this is going to be a really great video for all of you to kind of see the difference between me as well. And even sometimes Nat says that it's kind of like dating two people, you know, in one.
Kind of.
So, okay, and then a couple announcements before we get started. Oh yeah, so I will be traveling with my dad all across America. We're doing a little road trip, so he's going to be coming on to my live videos, potentially in November, so just keep that in mind. And then also, instead of a November 11th Galactic Federation event, I am doing a November 8th Galactic Federation event, which is on a Sunday. The reason why is because I will be on the road on the 11th with my dad, but I'm hoping to do some sort of live video on 11/11 anyway, just because it is that powerful. So tickets are available now for the Galactic Federation event. And then, oh yeah, one more thing. For all of the YouTube members, just a reminder that I am now doing questions, taking all of your questions for Sunday right after this video. So if you have any more questions for Nat and I, or just questions about a 5D relationship in general, be sure to go into the community section right after this. So,
Hi.
So Nat, I feel like people know of you, but they don't really know you. Mm-hmm. So how about you just kind of do a little intro in your background and your own journey, you know, before we met, and your own spiritual journey and how you got here.
Yeah, totally. So I became an American citizen when I was like 11. My dad's British and my mom's Swiss. I was actually born in the Bahamas. My dad was working in the hotel industry, and so I was born there and got to travel like all around the world. We lived in Egypt in a hotel on the 17th floor, and really got to see so many different cultures, you know, and religions. I didn't necessarily get brought up with any specific religion, meaning we went to church every Sunday. I was baptized Protestant. And then we ended up in all places, Salt Lake City, Utah, which is, you know, the home of, you know, the Mormon religion. So I was immediately brought into kind of a community that was very loving, in some places kind of ignorant to the rest of the world, but I got to feel the first sense of what a religious community was like. You know, there's pros and cons of that religious community, and being honest with you, you know, I didn't fit in. I was the only non-Mormon on the block, you know, and so at that point I was like, well, if you can't beat him, join him. So then I, you know, tried to be Mormon. I went to seminary class, and I got the Mormon boyfriend, and all of a sudden I had all the friends and everything was great. And then I felt like still something was missing, and I came out in high school, and so that was kind of a long time ago. That was like in 1996. But I came out, and I lost my boyfriend, I lost my Mormon friends, but I also gained like a big identity of who I was, right? And so through all of that, you know, I also had an amazing grandmother that was Catholic, and she was the one actually that opened me up to the paranormal. She believed in ghosts and spirits, and she kind of told me about those when I was a little girl. And we would go visit an old house in England, and she would say, "Tell me what you feel." And so as a child, I started to really understand what it felt like to use all my senses to sense something different. And so I really got hooked on that. And then I started listening to Art Bell, and listened to Art Bell on the radio, and you know, listened to the truckers going from the East Coast to the West Coast and all their crazy paranormal stories, and I was hooked. And so I just really just had a fascination to what's out there, and just through just kind of my own, I guess, attraction, I ended up, meeting a lot of people that were in the spiritual space that were psychics, and just really started dabbling in. I think I did Ouija board once, and I scared myself, so I don't think I want to do Ouija board ever again. But I just think that there's a connection to it, regardless if I was married to this beautiful one or not. But always kind of had those people in my life, and I just think in general, it's you can be super religious and you can still be attracted to aliens, and you can still be you can do whatever you want. My background, it just comes from a bunch of different. I've lived in bunch of different places. I've met a lot of different people, but at the end of the day, love is love, and regardless if I identify as gay, I learned really about who I needed to be to make myself feel happier as a human, right? And I had to go through that in a younger age, so.
Yeah, I call her OG gay because she came out at like 14.
Well, to my parents, like 16.
Okay, true. Yeah, I was a little late to the game on that one, but
Busy.
here we are.
Busy doing something else, I guess.
Okay, cool. So first question, do you want to read that one, babe?
Sure. All right. What are the best aspects of our relationship?
Oh, okay, yeah.
If it said your relationship, I guess.
But they're from people, right?
Right.
They're from
What's
other
the best
people.
aspect of your relationship? Yeah.
So I'll answer first. And I think I would consider our relationship to be a 5D relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people have their own not misconceptions, but their own understanding of what a 5D relationship is. And it doesn't mean that you're living in a whole different, world, because we do a lot of human things. Actually, the majority of our existence together is very human.
All of it is.
And so, but what I think makes our relationship so good is the fact that we have balance. And I was really thinking about this before we came on to this live video. And Nat and I have balance in all of the very physical, fundamental aspects, like silly things like financials, doing chores around the house, just the give and receive, even taking care of each other in that way as well. It's very balanced. And because we have a balanced physical dynamic and a human dynamic, that allows us to get deeper into the complexities of consciousness, to really understand, well, where are you at? How are you feeling? What dimension are you in? Which is beautiful. So I think balance is huge in any 5D relationship, because if you get sucked into that 3D, then you're not actually, sucked into the polarity. You're not really above it. So what about you? What do you think is one of the best aspects of our relationship?
I'd say that there's just like a strong foundation of, like, regardless of you being like a psychic or an influencer or whatever, is that you have like a strong mind and you know what you want. But it's she didn't come into this relationship like a clusterfuck. She had a bank account, she had a car, she had her stuff together. And I just think a lot of times in relationships, some of the foundational things aren't set up. I mean, my dad always said, like, doesn't matter who you are, you just need to have the three most basic things, is like a roof over your head, a job, and like, food to eat. And at the end of the day, if you can't take care of the basics, you're probably not going to be able to go much farther and explore other things. And so, myself, when I bought this condo 8 years ago, 2 days after I got the keys, I lost my job. And all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, what am I going to do to pay my mortgage? And it's like, life is always going to change. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not going to go off and say, table flip and forget all the decisions I made. I had to make it work, and so there's always going to be ups and downs. But I think the core thing is to be able to have the basics taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Also, Nat and I always make fun of, like, being an influencer, just because it's such a, like, I don't know if it's because it's like a pretentious title or if it's just hilarious to be an influencer for a living. So we always have to call it an influencer.
Yeah.
Because it's hilarious.
And like, because I own my own digital marketing agency, we don't really want to call them influencers. We want to call them content creators. but it's like, that's weird. That's a weird title as well.
Also,
It's
yeah.
like, it's just a person online that's making money and also spreading the good word and running a business, right?
Having
It's
an
just
opinion.
having an opinion, and it's about creating content and trying to live just like the rest of us.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. How do you keep the fun and inner child alive in your relationship?
Okay, this is, I think, a really great part of being in a high vibrational 5D relationship. You know, I've known a lot of even couples who are extremely spiritually serious, right? So much so to the point where, you know, well, all day long they're figuring out what their dreams mean and their meditation together, and it's all just, it's so serious, you know what I mean? Even in a spiritual way, like, let's do yoga, this is our time for yoga, you know? And the beautiful thing about Nat and I is we're so inner child, like both of us. Actually, as a matter of fact, basically an hour ago, she was like on this meeting, like big boss lady on this meeting, and like caught her in the middle of the meeting smashing a Rubik's Cube into a bucket of slime. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're like,
Yeah.
anyway, but it's those moments, like we laugh so much together and we make fun of things like the influencer thing, and we both have, like, I'll skip around, and you know, and we can really gauge each other's energy that way. What about you, babe? What do you think about inner child stuff?
I mean, you just have to have fun. Like, just don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, you know, I get caught up in the, I overthink things, and I sometimes just really get, you know, focused on the wrong things. And the inner child part is, you know, you need to have fun in the relationship. You need to be laughing because, you know, there's just, we only have one life, this one life now. Maybe we'll go to a bunch of different other lives depending on stuff, but just have fun.
Totally. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, next question. Oh yeah. How do you deal with triggers in the relationship?
So triggers is an interesting word. I don't think I ever heard about the word trigger and the word relationship together in one. But I think when I met Liz, the word trigger got brought up a lot, not because necessarily she was triggered with air quotes. It's more like that's a label for what you could call something that doesn't resonate, right? And so what triggers me in a relationship, or let's say in the relationship that we have, is let's say I have one perspective of doing something, and all of a sudden she's like, well, I'm going to ride my motorcycle. And I'm like, well, you just hurt your neck doing Pilates. That might not be the best idea. And like, you know, she'll say, I'm going to ride my motorcycle. And she'll just say that because she just wants to say that. And I'll just get triggered. But then it's like, at that point, I have a decision to make. Do I just like keep fighting that? Or I'm just like, you need to do whatever you need to do. And I'll say, go ride the motorcycle. And 9 times out of 10, she's like, you're right. I'm just going to take the car. Because it's like, if I give into it, you know, it will actually be to my benefit, versus like if I push against it, there's going to be a little bit more of I think like some sort of opposite vibration of where we want it to go,
Of resistance.
Yeah, of resistance.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. How do we deal with triggers? I think that when you come just in general in a relationship from an insecure place, or a place where you don't really know yourself too well, there's going to be a lot of things that trigger you. The number one thing that I've really had to learn is to take full responsibility for all of the triggers, and understanding that if you're not aware of putting all the dishes in the sink, for example, even though that's not really an issue,
like, nice example. Like,
anyway, so yeah, so, you know, it's in my mind, it's like, why is that triggering me, right? That has nothing to do with Nat, right? It has nothing to do with her. So I think it's so important. What I've learned is just to take responsibility for whatever it is that's triggering you, and understanding that it has nothing to do with your partner. It has everything to do with what you're going through in that moment. So it really requires like responsibility, accountability, awareness, space, right? Creating that space between you and your partner in order to not continue or repeat the trigger. And Nat and I, you and I don't get into like fights ever, really.
I think it's another word too of like trigger is another word of like pushing buttons, right? Like we all know whether it's with our family or our friends or our partner, we know the buttons that will push them. And it's like, it's not like those buttons are visible and you're like, I'm going to press that button today. But you just know at that moment that if you just kind of just push a little bit further in whatever you're talking about, it's not necessarily going to, you don't feel aligned with what you're saying. And I know exactly how that feels sometimes because I'll be really stressed out at work and something will trigger me that maybe like Liz says, and like I'll be like in my mind I'm like, oh yeah, well what about this, right? And I know that if I have that type of energy going into it, it's really not going to be beneficial, you know. So I think for me, what I've learned in this relationship is just like to take a moment because I'm super impulsive. I just want to say what's on my mind, and sometimes, you know, I'm gonna maybe say the wrong thing, but at the end of the day, I think it's just to know that like just be open to you know, being open to being triggered, because that's like part of who we are.
Also, it's really funny, like when we first got together, the only time we ever like bicker, which once again doesn't happen often, we're both always right. Like I can't even bring up all the countless examples of this, but there's one main example, which is the color teal, okay? So I don't know, I think it was a bag. I got like a backpack, a huge backpack adventure bag, and I'm like, oh, I love this color. It's teal, it's blue, right? It's this color blue. And then she's like, no, this is green. And I said, no, this is blue.
Right.
And turns out it was actually blue.
She actually wanted to be,
time.
She just wants to be right. And also it depends on like the actual hue of teal, because there's there's a spectrum of colors.
But the whole point is
we're
that
both right.
Teal is a mix of green and blue, and it's not one or the other. She is a tad bit colorblind, so technically I was right.
Maybe I just see the world in the right colors. I don't know.
I'm totally kidding. But seriously, that's definitely a male masculine energy that I need to overcome.
No,
I'm working on it.
You're good. It's green.
It's green. Okay, so what else? Okay, Natasha, what is your biggest challenge in being with Elizabeth?
I don't really think there's a challenge. I think that, you know, I saw that question earlier, and I would say that, you know, in general, we're together, and we have viewpoints that probably a lot of you guys listening do as well. And sometimes we'll be in public places with a group of people, friends that aren't necessarily into the air quotes spiritual community, and they'll bring up things like the flu vaccine or the presidential election or things that are kind of like, I would call them touchy subjects that you wouldn't talk about even around the dinner table. And they just want to poke at our opinion, and it doesn't necessarily align with what I want, where I want to be vibrationally. I want to have a high vibrational conversation. And so what the challenge is in the relationship is that sometimes we have a little bit of an outside force that's like pushing our buttons, because they want to see, they're like, oh yes, you know, Liz, you're a psychic, so give me the lottery numbers. And it's like, you know, that's kind of insulting, and thank you for saying that, and you can just like, you know, move off now. But it's just, I'd say it's mainly that. Other than that, I don't really see that there's a challenge. I think
you were talking about pulling me back down earlier.
Yeah, like I used the example of like, because I think it's easy to channel, she can kind of, I use the analogy of like a red balloon. She can go and like float off in this world of channeling, because there's so much information that it's almost like I'm holding the string down to keep her down. So I think that that's part of where it's challenging, where if she's done a full day of sessions or she's just had a bunch of downloads, and I can tell by her mannerisms and who she is, she's just not connected, and I want to have a normal conversation, and it's completely over her head, right? And so that's the challenge. But the challenge is that I just know that that's not necessarily the appropriate time to have that specific conversation. And then I think that's why we've kind of we have like specific, like you can consider them dates in our week where we cover certain things within our life, whether it's work or personal, so that we ensure that like the air is kept clean, so to speak, and we don't necessarily bog each other down. Yeah. And bog is not the right word. It's more like overstimulate.
Because we're both in very stimulating occupations. And that actually brings up a really good point. What did I want? Oh yeah. like whether you have a bunch of kids or maybe just one kid or just a busy life in general or thriving careers, but if you're busy as a couple, it can be very difficult to come together and harmonize your energy. Even if it's like a quick hello and goodbye and I love you in the day, it's not enough to talk about everything that you're going through. So Nat and I have these, like, I think we call them CEO boss meetings, CEO meetings or something like that.
Weekly babes CEO meetings on
yeah.
Sundays.
On Sundays. And we block off 2 hours every Sunday to sit down and say, you know, what are you dealing with? Personal, professional, spiritual. What am I dealing with? Personal, professional, spiritual. What do we need to be doing together in the relationship? We do that once a week. We've done that for a couple weeks now. And it really helps in allotting that space, right? So even if you don't have crazy careers and you have, a crazy home life with a bunch of kids, it's important to have that balance of energy. So I think that that's really great. And then the other question was, Elizabeth, what's your biggest challenge in being with Natasha? Overall, our relationship is so easy. Like, it's just so. Oh, I think I got hair in my eye.
It's super easy when there's not hair in her eye. So
and then what was I going to say? Oh yeah, but your emotions are challenging for me. They're not triggering at all, but sometimes I feel like I literally cannot compute where she's at or what she's going through, and I've really had to be vulnerable and learn a lot about my own emotions and how to support her in that best way. But I talk about my struggles with emotions and that all the time in my videos.
yeah, and I think also it's like, whether or not you believe in astrology or not, but so I'm a Cancer, and she's a Cancer as well. But I'm definitely I'm clairaudient, so I'm constantly just hearing things and feeling things, and like I go into a room and I absorb people's energy. And so, if I'm overly upset about something, I want to tell Liz Liddell, and I want to deal with it right now. Or if I'm really happy, I want to talk about it. So emotions are, happy, sad, angry, all of the above, right? And I would say that, just to go back to the weekly meeting that we have, it's like, meeting sounds so like businessy, but at the end of the day, it's like we're very busy and we want to make sure that we just cover all that business stuff in once a week, so that throughout the rest of the week it clears the air, and we know that we have a place every week to talk about those important things. And honestly, by the time I get ready to talk to you about that Sunday thing, I've actually had more time to think about it, and I've actually either solved the problem myself, or actually I'm able to articulate it in a better way, because there was probably more of a deeper rooted issue that I was feeling, and it kind of bubbles up, right? So it gives you a moment to breathe, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, awesome. Okay, this is a good question. A lot of you had this question. I got all of your questions from Instagram and a YouTube video that I did maybe a week ago. But a lot of you asked this question. What do you do when one partner is in 3D and the other is in 5D? I'm going to probably start with this question, or start with the answer. So it was so divine and aligned, because my brother called me up this morning. He's having girl troubles. So, he kind of just mentioned, he's like, what's going on? Like, it's very difficult for me to support, my girlfriend in an emotional way. And it was quite a divine conversation. So what I talked to him about is what happens in their relationship, right? And this is a very common thing in most romantic relationships, is you've got a divine masculine, divine feminine, and the divine feminine energy will have a lot of emotions, and without being aware or responsible, really anyone with emotions, doesn't matter, divine masculine, feminine, will project that state of being, will project those emotions onto someone else, right? That happens all the time, right? So if you think about a 3D person in the relationship, they're projecting their emotions without responsibility or accountability onto the other person. If the other person is not aware enough or high vibe enough, they will get sucked into the 3D energy, and all of a sudden, they take it personally, right? So there have been moments where, just for an example, Nat will be like, well, why are you going out with your friends? Or can I come too? Or like, what's going on? Or like, can I be involved? Or whatever. Or getting upset that I'm just going out, or getting upset. And I don't really go out often. It sounds like I'm like a partier. I don't. But maybe even getting upset that I'm on my bike. And so for me in that instant, I could take that personally and say, well, what am I doing wrong that you're now upset over something that I'm doing? But nowadays, I have a pretty good separation in a healthy way to say, babe, what's going on with you? Like, how's your day? Do you have a client that's, pissing you off? Are you about to get your period? Like, where is your emotional state? If you're not aware of the fact that that projection has nothing to do with you, if you're not aware of that, you're going to get sucked into that. You're going to take that on. You're going to blame yourself. Then you're going to get triggered and say, no, but I am going to go out and ride my motorcycle. And it's a very lack of compassion conversation rather than, hey, are you okay? Why are you upset with me right now? Like, what, that kind of thing. So I kind of explained that to my brother. I said, she's just in an emotional state. You're taking that on. You're blaming yourself. And you're getting sucked into that 3D energy. So ultimately, it's about removing yourself, staying in a high vibrational place in 5D and be compassionate to your partner to say, why are you so upset right now? And how can I help you in this moment with being upset? So that's what, that's how I think that it's best dealing with a 3D partner versus a 5D partner. If you're the one who's aware and in 5D, always take the higher road and be compassionate for where they're at and do not take that on personally.
And sometimes she's in 3D and I'm in 5D, right?
Yeah. Really?
And yeah, come on.
I'm kidding.
Really? And yeah, and you know what it could be? It could be because she went out with a bunch of friends and she was in a very 3D conversation, and so that's kind of like where her mindset is. And I could be just kind of like binge watching like my favorite documentaries and being more of a kind of a high vibrational place, and I'm kind of bringing you into where my space is. Yeah. So I think it's a balance. It's like it's a spiritual seesaw.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And you and I are really good at recognizing where the other person is at and balancing them out. Like when I'm having a bad week or, I'm feeling really exhausted and I'm just like doing a bunch of work in bed, she'll come in and get me tea and like, support me and take care of me. You're really good caretaker. And then likewise, when she's having a rough day or a rough week, I'm right there to take care of her. And there's once again, that balance is so key in having that relationship. And I also want to mention too, communication is huge. We're really good. I mean, other than our CEO meeting, you've really helped me like sit down and deal with the emotion or sit down and deal with the communication, in that way and support each other in that way. So it's been really nice.
Cool. What am I? Let's see. How does Nat deal with EA knowing what she's thinking and feeling all the time? So, I mean,
we're very
literally, she's not like reading my mind, but she's reading my mind in a different way. Like, it's like we were at my mom's house in Joshua Tree over the past week, and my mom had a friend over. And so we're all sitting around, and this woman has like such a like boisterous, like lovely personality, and she had this like laugh, and this laugh, it's like we were with her at this point, and then she kept going, just laughing and laughing and laughing, and we immediately like looked at each other, and we were like, her eyes were open because we were exactly thinking the same thing, and I was like, is she? Are we laughing at the same thing? Are we on this? But we knew we were basically on the same page, and it's those moments of where you're as the observer, you're sharing a moment together, and you're able to kind of connect on that one point, and then as that thread keeps going, you're kind of on the same page. So I think it happens a lot.
Absolutely, and I think that you brought up a good point, which is I'm not like sitting at my desk trying to read Nat's mind all the time. As a matter of fact, if I literally heard her thoughts verbatim, I think I would go a little bit nuts because your brain works like a freaking machine. But there's so many times, like almost every day, like honestly, where
The hot
she'll
sauce last night, right?
yeah, exactly. So she like we got some food and she came into the kitchen and I was at the time that she came in, I was like I had the hot sauce in my hand. I'm not really a hot sauce person, and I was gonna go bring it over to her in the bedroom, and she's like, oh, perfect. So we met halfway because we were both on the same page, and we do that all the time. And it's so easy having a relationship where you're just kind of in each other's frequency. But I also want to mention too, and I've said this before in other videos, where, you know, I've had to cut cords with her in the middle of a conversation because all of a sudden, if your neck is hurting, my neck will start hurting. And it's like, how can I support you if we're both hurting? Because we're both so empathetic and feeling each other. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'm cutting the cord. And then I can help you objectively with that, right? And then obviously in the next moment we create another cord, but hopefully it's in a healthier way. So, yeah. So it's very convenient that we can read each other's mind and we're on that page. Okay, this is a good one. Oh, Abby
There's a
hates
squirrel.
squirrels. Abigail, come here. Come on, come up here. No. It's not
Anyway.
happening. Okay, so, have you experienced a lot of sexual trauma? Oh, if you've experienced a lot of sexual trauma, how do you trust again in relationships? I definitely was very drawn to this question because, Abby, because personally I have dealt with sexual trauma, and it has been very difficult for me to open up in that way and feel supported and you know, in trust with my partner, with Nat. So she's been really good. I know a lot of women, especially, I think the rates are like 1 in 2 or 1 in 3, like it's pretty wild, experience sexual trauma in their lifetime. And the biggest thing for me was pushing the boundaries in a compassionate way. I would never push my own boundaries because it was safe and comfortable where I was, right? And obviously I switched even sexualities, which is a huge boundary to push in general. But Nat's been, it's like, you know, maybe every 6 months, there's something new that we introduce that would have been a huge no for me. And I'm not talking like crazy S&M stuff, because I don't want your minds to be like, oh my God. But just really simple things that I would have never been comfortable with before because I have that trauma that I still hold on to. And so I would say pushing the boundaries in a compassionate way, because I never feel overwhelmed when you do kind of help me get out of my shell in that way.
Definitely. And I think that just not only there's men and women that have both experienced sexual trauma, and I think that part of, you know, being able to be with friends and or a partner that you're able to communicate, you know, your experiences with, that's part of like the connection process. Like, I want to know what that experience is, because by understanding what that experience is, I can kind of see it from the other side, and I can say, well, of course that's why you might not like X, right? Or you might not like Z. But what about, you know, another alternative? And the thing is it's not like there's all these crazy things that she was saying, but it's really more about understanding, communicating, and creating the space for your partner to feel safe. I think that's the thing. Feel safe to be able to communicate and say, hey, this happened to me, and you know what, I kind of maybe at the time I liked it, or I didn't like it, or I didn't know what was going on, or whatever it was, and that's okay to say that, because the fact is that you just communicated that, and I just learned that, and I get to interpret that how I want to. But by me interpreting that builds her trust within us, so that, you know, I may say something to her that will make her feel closer to me, because she may not know that maybe I've experienced my own sexual trauma, right? So it's just about communicating and just saying, you know, whatever you say is fine. You know, it's not if you're a man or a woman, it's about, let me create the space for you to say something, and maybe I'll have no opinion afterwards, but I want to give that opportunity to you, you know?
Absolutely.
So.
And then something else popped into my mind. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like an awkward thing, but every once in a while, you and I will get into a conversation where I feel embarrassed and I want to hide. And it's really funny. And like, sometimes you feel embarrassed and want to hide too, right? It's that inner child that comes out. but it feels weird because we're so connected and we can talk about anything and we're so comfortable with each other. So when those awkward moments come up, I'm like, why is this weird right now? Like, why are we so awkward about this? Whether it be like financial stuff or sexual stuff, it feels like nothing should be off the table sort of thing as far as conversations, but it's that human. There's these, it's like hitting a human boundary of like, oh, this is inappropriate, or you're not supposed to say this, or whatever it may be. It's weird, but we always break through those boundaries, but it's cute when we get embarrassed by human things.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also like, as we're being married, we're learning how to connect, right? And so part of that is, we want to buy a house in Canada one day, and we're learning about, I have my business and she has her business, and so we had to have our accountants meet, and so I had actually, I had to produce a budget, and I don't think I've ever given a budget to a partner before, and I'm blushing right now because it's like, why am I blushing? But it's like it's the raw version of me, right? It's the work product of me, and bringing that up and you bringing that up, it creates this embarrassment, and it's as we know each other so well, and it's not embarrassing because we don't like the numbers. It's just a side of ourselves that isn't necessarily something that we can quickly hide.
Like not romantic
it's just
either.
Yeah, it's just like raw. It's raw, but
but
it's also But I think that's all part of being in a relationship and being like pulling the veil away and seeing the true side of the person navigating that for sure.
Okay, cool. Thoughts on age differences in relationships?
Well, there we go. No. Well, I'm 13 years older than her, and that's basically that. So I've always been like when I was the OG gay, I had my fake ID, and I was like hanging out with older people, and then I guess at some point that switched, and then I've just always, I've always had a younger kind of heart and personality, maybe old soul, young, young heart in a sense, and young spirit. And I gravitate towards people, that have been younger. But to be honest with you, I don't ever really think, oh my gosh, she's 28. Oh, and she, whatever. I will say that like the only time that the age difference really comes up is when there's like this social situation, let's say, where she's having a conversation with two of her friends, and she comes home, and it's like this dynamic that I've experienced before, and I know that she needs to experience that as a human at 28 years old. Supposedly, like, all your moons are aligned when you're 0, 14, and 28. It's like, it's part of her process, but it's like she needs to kind of experience that as a person, a human, a woman herself. I can give her advice. And so sometimes I'll see some of those things, but at the end of the day, there's really no age difference other than I'm always right. So I'm just
I feel like definitely like within me there's still some maturity that needs to be there, but I also feel like I'm not 28. I feel like I'm 280. Like I feel like I'm older than she is, because she's just such a young spirit. Like it's so beautiful because she's got that livelihood to her as well. And sometimes I'm like a grumpy old lady, I really feel that. So my last partner was 12 years older, and then the partner before that was 22 years older. So you're right in the same. You're right in that alignment.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's good. It all works out. So no, I don't believe that there's any issues. I believe age is completely just a number. Like, I mean, this works. I could not imagine dating a 28-year-old. Oh my God.
But there's some great 28-year-olds out there, though. That's not for you, but I'm saying they're the greatest. But I'm just saying in general, like, there's someone for everyone, regardless of age. That's what I wanted to say.
There really is. Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Is Elizabeth more spiritual, and how does that affect you guys, especially when you first met?
I thought that's a question I'm asking. No, answering. No. Oh, it's all good. So when we first met, I would say that like I didn't have as many crystals in my house, and I didn't have as many tarot cards, but I did have a collection of spiritual people I knew in LA, and I did have some basics. But I guess it didn't really affect me because like we
No.
came together because we were on the same. We worked.
Yeah.
I liked aliens. She likes aliens. That's all good.
Just an alien family.
Yeah.
Well, and then with this question too, like, I don't consider myself more spiritual. Like, I don't really consider being able to have certain abilities or getting downloads. I don't consider that to be spiritual. And, I don't, like, I'm not like some crazy freaking hippie. Like, there are some people out there, and there's no better or worse, but there are some people in the spiritual community who they live and they breathe and they eat spirituality. And every aspect of every day, you have to have some sort of responsibility or accountability, or are you doing your mantras and are you meditating 6 hours a day? And my personal life off the camera is I wouldn't really consider to be, some spiritual yogi who needs to do all these things to be spiritual, So my life is pretty human, so I don't consider that to be any sort of issue or even deficit, and I have zero expectation of Nat to do any of that stuff other than just to live your life. Every once in a while, though, I will become the teacher. And I explained this in my Teacher Human video a couple weeks ago, where I feel like, and we've talked about this many times, where I feel like, I'm like, well, what are you learning from that situation? And you're like, I don't want to know the lesson. I just want support, right, from a partner. And so I'm learning how to be human in those ways when it comes down to information and lessons and repeated patterns and stuff like that. Because sometimes I do treat you like a client, even though...
I mean, it's just, you're always going to have a nature of wanting to help, I think.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, like, regardless of, like, the word spiritual is a big umbrella word.
Yeah.
Because you have all the religions under the term spirituality,
It's
right?
true.
Catholicism, Protestant, Hindu, Buddha, whatnot. But I can tell you one experience that kind of prompts me is, like, so when I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah, being a good Mormon was, going to church every Sunday, marrying in the temple, giving 10% tithing to the LDS church, and making sure that you were a good Mormon. And in a sense, living in Utah was like, in my experience, it was all the Mormons trying to keep up with the Joneses, in a sense. They all wanted to be this good Mormon, air quotes again. And behind the scenes, there was like bad marriages, there was infidelity, there was just lots of different things. And everyone was trying to be a good Mormon, but not really, right? They didn't authentically really want to be a Mormon. They were just trying to check the boxes because that's really all they knew. And then you would have this opposite effect where you'd have something called the Jack Mormon, which would go into the opposite, right? And so for me, I said, well, I love all my Mormon friends to date that love the community because it gives them something out of it and they want to be there. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's a beautiful part about relationships. And that's what true spirituality is really living and breathing and loving and being part of that community. And any sort of stereotypical label at the end of the day is actually just a label.
Or saying that you have to do this, and this to be spiritual is just bullshit, in my opinion. So, okay, interesting. Next question. I'm currently in a long-term relationship. Should sex be this much work? So I'll state my opinion and then you can state your opinion. I'm sure we have different opinions on this, but for me, it's more about quality than quantity. Like I said, you might have a different opinion on that. Anyway, so no, I really do believe that there's this natural fire. You know what I mean? There should be this baseline foundational fire and attraction and chemistry in a sexual way between you and your partner. So once again, there should never be this standard of, well, it's got to be 10 times a week or we're not in a good relationship, because once again, you're just kind of playing out some sort of program. But when you do get together and when you do have the time and you spend that time with that person, there should be that natural, harmonious chemistry. And I mentioned this in my sex video a couple months ago, where if you're having a hard time connecting with your partner in that way, then create the space, Maybe you want to throw on some music. It's kind of cheesy, but maybe you want to light some candles, right? Like, it's important that you value that, right? So in a sense, you should put effort into it. As far as should it be work, both of you should take out the same amount of time to be together intimately, even if it's not sex, having that intimacy. But in another sense, it shouldn't be that much work. Once you do really connect, there should be that natural foundational connection.
Yeah, and kind of like going back to what I said before, which is, a healthy sex life is not prescriptive to 5 times a week or doing it. You don't have, like, if your friends relationships, he's getting laid 3 times a week, therefore you need to do 4. Life's not like that. And I mean, things are up and down. And first of all, it's also about understanding your sexuality and personal sexuality, which is also maybe having the conversation of masturbation, making sure you can openly talk about that, because you know what, it's not a taboo subject if you can make it not a taboo subject within your relationship, and that's okay as well. True. And I think it's part of just communicating and just really knowing that don't feel angry that your partner is not giving you sex. There's a reason. The opportunity is to communicate with them in an intimate way, which is maybe just having a conversation to break the glass and get closer, because there's probably a reason why, if you don't already know.
Yeah, the trust, communication, safety all really come up with that. Good question. Okay, I think we're at 2 more questions. Yes, we are. Okay.
All right. What's some advice that you would give people in long-term relationships right now, especially during quarantine? I would say just like mix things up, like do some fun things, like try some new food that you haven't tried before, or I just looked on some plane flights with my mom. Maybe book a trip. You can buy cheap flights right now for like a year from now. Like make plans, right? Connect with an old friend. Like I had a FaceTime call with some old coworkers, from about 10 years ago. It's really nice to catch up with who they are, or just just do something together or separate that's different while you're in quarantine, to really kind of connect to you, because ultimately there's a lot of us that are in the same house 24/7, and they're not necessarily looking at their partner the way that they looked at their partner the day before when you would leave and come back, but this is the real raw reality, right? This is what you have to make of it. And I think that there's a really awesome opportunity to get to know each other in a different way.
I agree. Yeah, I would sum that up. Any other advice for people in long-term relationships right now? Yeah, I mean, I think creating new intentions together. What do you want for 2021, right? What do you want for this next year? Is there any sort of ways that you want to switch up the relationship? Try something new, like you mentioned, but have that conversation together. If you don't have that conversation together and you're the only one saying, these are all the things that I want in my relationship, you're going to be up here and you're going to get disappointed every single time. So really bringing your partner into that conversation as well, if you're in a long-term relationship. And then the last question here is pretty much the opposite. What's some advice you would give single people who are looking for the one at this time?
So before I met Liz, I was single, obviously, and I was on like a bunch of dating apps, and I had done all that, and I felt like I had it's the in the gay community, you go on Bumble or Tinder, and you're like, oh, I know her, or my friends dated her, and you're just like, so definitely had those experiences. But the advice that I would give is, I'll tell you that this is just from like experience, but go into a date and have fun. Like, don't go into a date and think that like this is going to be Mr. or Mrs. Right. I have a friend of mine that recently started a long distance relationship during quarantine, and actually it was the perfect time because it's given them the time to talk on the phone and get to know each other, and they realize there is something really there. But being single is, I think, an opportunity during quarantine to actually figure out what you want and have fun, and learn that maybe the same type of person you've been previously dating, cookie cutter, perfect guy or girl, maybe isn't that right person. Maybe you should try something else, and also there's like so many networking events now online. I think that there would have to be something that would be aligned to you guys is what you're into. I mean, I'm sure there's probably like an online poker or chess club, something, or so collecting Legos. I don't know. So I don't know if that's a thing, but
it's so funny. Yeah, I mean, I I would definitely back up everything that you just mentioned. As far as single people, yeah, try something new. You never know what you're going to be drawn to, just like you mentioned. I never knew I was going to be drawn to a woman, so that was definitely something new. But yeah, and then developing that long distance sort of energy before you dive into anything physical. And it's a very new way of connecting with people as well. So I'm not really great at advice for single people, but oh yeah, one more thing that I do mention to a lot of my single friends is do not settle for anything that isn't fire, right? I truly believe that there is someone out there for everyone, and when you meet that person, it is freaking fire.
And don't be a fixer. That's the thing either.
Yeah.
Don't think you can fix them to make it better,
Because
that's
that's
just
awful.
That's just pulling out. Like I real quick. I had it one time. This I think she was like a medium. She's like, you have your bubble and you have you have your partner, and then in the middle you have the relationship bubble, and you put the energy into the bubble. You don't ever want to go and
Either
pull
take
from the
or-
other partner.
or
You
push.
really want to create your own little bubble of a relationship and foster that. It's never going to be 50-50 because that's just life, but definitely don't try to fix someone.
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your support and your wonderful chat and comments. And hopefully you got something from this as well. And you got to know a little bit more about Natasha and a little bit more about our relationship and my human side.
yep, and just don't forget to like and subscribe below, and maybe click my link too. Bye, guys.
Bye. Her Instagram handle is in the description below. If you want to creep on her a little bit, that is totally permitted.
Cool.
Bye
guys.
everyone.